The war had been long and brutal. For years, humanity fought against the alien forces, struggling to survive against overwhelming odds. The aliens had superior technology, powerful weapons, and an army that seemed unbeatable. As the years passed, Earth's defenses grew weaker. Cities were destroyed, millions of lives were lost, and the hope of victory slowly faded. Yet despite all the destruction, humanity had not given up. The aliens believed they had won. After a series of successful attacks, they thought that Earth was finally broken. They thought there were no more humans left to fight, no more hope for the future. The alien commanders celebrated in their grand ships, their voices filled with laughter and victory. They thought their long campaign was finally over. They believed they had wiped out all human resistance. But they were wrong. On Earth, in a hidden underground base far from the celebrations above, a small group of survivors were hard at work. These weren't the top generals or famous leaders. They were ordinary people, scientists, soldiers, engineers, and civilians who had managed to survive the alien invasion. They were the last hope of humanity, and they were not ready to give up. In the deepest part of the base, a scientist named Dr. Emily Parker stood in front of a large glowing machine. Sweat dripped down her forehead as she worked tirelessly. The machine was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. It was a mix of human innovation and desperation. Dr. Parker and her team had spent countless hours building it in secret, knowing that their time was running out. They had built something that could change the course of the war. "We need to hurry," Dr. Parker whispered to her team. "The aliens won't give us much more time. We need to act now." Her voice was steady, but deep down, she knew how close they were to failure. The world above was lost, but they could still make a difference. They had to. Meanwhile, high above Earth, the alien commanders were in their command ships, basking in the glow of their victory. Their fleet of massive ships surrounded Earth, and they were confident. They had the power to destroy whatever was left of humanity. They watched as the last human defenses crumbled. On the surface, the humans had been quiet for days. The aliens were certain that nothing remained. What the aliens didn't know was that the humans had been working in the shadows, preparing their secret weapon. No one could have guessed that, in the darkness, a small group of survivors was about to challenge the aliens in a way they never expected. As the alien leaders celebrated their victory, a single, unexpected signal flashed across their communication systems. At first, the aliens dismissed it. It was weak and barely audible. But then, it repeated, over and over again. The signal was clear, though the message was strange. It was in an old human language, one that had not been used for hundreds of years. The message was simple: "We're not done yet." The alien commanders were stunned. They quickly checked their systems. They had assumed Earth was nothing but ruins. How could there be anyone left? They ordered their ships to scan the surface, but they found nothing. There was no sign of human life. But still, the message continued: "We're not done yet." Back in the underground base, Dr. Parker and her team exchanged nervous glances. They knew the aliens would soon discover the source of the message. The countdown on the machine in front of them was almost complete. They had no time to waste. "We need to go," Dr. Parker said, turning to her team. "Now." The team quickly gathered their things and ran down the dark hallways. They had been preparing for this moment for years, but now that it was finally here, the weight of what they were about to do felt even heavier. They had no choice but to move forward. Dr. Parker's heart raced. She could feel the pressure mounting. The aliens might not have noticed them yet, but that wouldn't last long. They had to move fast. As they made their way to the launch chamber, the rumble of the alien ships above shook the ground. The sound reminded them just how close they were to being wiped out. In the launch chamber, the team worked together to power up the ship that would carry their secret weapon into space. The ship was called Hope's Dawn, and it was humanity's last hope. It wasn't a big ship, but it was packed with everything they had left. the most advanced technology humanity could make, and the strongest will to survive. Dr. Parker climbed into the control seat and began to input the coordinates. Her hands shook slightly, but she steadied herself. She knew what they had to do. The alien forces above Earth were powerful, but humanity had one thing they didn't have: hope. And hope, as the humans had always believed, was enough to change everything. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The numbers echoed in Dr. Parker's mind. This was it. They were about to make their move. The countdown hit 0. With a roar, Hope's dawn blasted off from the surface of Earth. The ship shot through the atmosphere, faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. The survivors aboard felt a sense of excitement mixed with fear. They were flying into the unknown. The aliens, still focused on their victory celebrations, finally began to notice something strange. The humans, it seemed, were not as defeated as they had thought. A small ship, unrecognized by their systems, was approaching their fleet. It was too late to stop them. The battle had just begun. The sky above Earth shimmered with the fading light of the setting sun, casting long shadows over the quiet planet. Above, the alien ships hovered in silence, their massive forms stretching across the horizon. They had believed the battle was over. Earth's defenses were gone, its people defeated, and their victory celebrations had only just begun. But in the hidden corners of Earth, things were different. Humanity had one more trick to play. Hope's dawn soared through the atmosphere, its engines roaring as it cut through the clouds. Inside the ship, Dr. Emily Parker and her small team of survivors braced themselves for the journey ahead. The ship was primitive compared to the alien technology that surrounded them, but it carried with it the hopes and dreams of every human left alive. They had worked tirelessly to build it, knowing the risks they were taking. Now, as the ship ascended into space, the weight of their mission settled on their shoulders. Dr. Parker sat at the controls, her hand steady as she guided the ship toward the alien fleet. Behind her, the others were preparing for what they knew would be their only chance to strike back. They had no illusions about the danger. The aliens were powerful, and their ships were far more advanced. But the humans were resourceful. They had always been that way, finding ways to survive against the odds. Now, it was time to see if they could do it once more. The ship's sensors flickered, detecting the alien fleet in the distance. They were vast, hundreds of ships floating in the cold vacuum of space, ready to crush any remaining resistance. The sight would have been overwhelming for anyone else, but not for Dr. Parker. She had seen worse, and she was not about to back down now. "Activate the cloaking device," she said, her voice calm but determined. One of her team members quickly worked at the console, and a soft beep echoed through the cabin. The ship's outer shell shimmered, blending with the darkness of space. It was a crude cloaking device, but it would work long enough for them to get close enough to the alien fleet. The plan was simple: get as close as possible, disable their communications, and then send a message to the aliens that humanity was still a force to be reckoned with. But as they moved closer, the tension inside the ship grew. Every moment was a risk. The aliens were watching the skies, and if they detected anything unusual, they would fire without hesitation. The human team knew this. They had prepared for this moment their entire lives, but it didn't make the weight of what they were about to do any lighter. They were about to face the might of an entire alien fleet, with nothing but their wits and a handful of weapons. "Approaching target," Dr. Parker announced, her voice cutting through the silence. Outside the ship, the vastness of the alien fleet came into view. It was an intimidating sight. The alien ships were sleek and powerful, their metal surfaces gleaming in the light of distant stars. But humanity had something they didn't. They had the will to fight, even when all seemed lost. The ship jolted as it entered the edge of the alien fleet's sensor range. Dr. Parker's heart skipped a beat. They had to stay hidden for just a little longer. If the aliens detected them now, it would be over before it had even started. "Ready the signal," Dr. Parker said, her eyes scanning the monitors. "We've only got one chance at this." Her team nodded in silent agreement. They were all prepared for the risks, but none of them could shake the feeling that this was a turning point. They had the power to change the course of the war. As they got closer to the heart of the alien fleet, Dr. Parker initiated the next phase of the plan. The ship's engines powered down, and the crew held their breath as they drifted silently through space. The alien ships, unaware of their presence, continued their patrols, their weapons at the ready. But they were distracted by their celebrations. They believed the war was won. That's when the message was sent. Dr. Parker pressed a button on the console, and the message was broadcast through the alien fleet's communication systems. It was a simple message, one that would change everything. Humanity is not defeated. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the alien fleet's communications crackled with confusion. Their systems struggled to make sense of the message. The humans had no idea how the aliens would react, but they knew one thing for certain. They had made their presence known. In the heart of the alien fleet, the commanders stared at their monitors in disbelief. They had not expected this. For a moment, they wondered if it was a trick, a last-ditch effort from a few surviving humans. But as the message repeated, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Humanity had survived, and they were not going to give up without a fight. "What is this?" one of the alien commanders demanded, turning to his officers. How could they still be alive? Their forces were wiped out. "We don't know, sir," an officer responded. "The signal is coming from Earth, but we can't locate its source." The aliens scrambled to find the origin of the message, but the human ship remained hidden, cloaked in the darkness of space. Dr. Parker knew they had bought themselves a small window of time, but it wouldn't last long. The aliens would soon figure out where they were, and when they did, the battle would begin. But that was a problem for another moment. For now, humanity had made its move. The alien commanders might have thought they had won, but they had underestimated the resilience of the human spirit. And that mistake was about to cost them dearly. The team inside Hope's Dawn exchanged glances. They knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge was ahead, but for the first time in a long time, they allowed themselves a moment of hope. They were not defeated. They had fought back. And the war was far from over. As the humans inside Hope's Dawn floated silently in space, a sense of determination settled over the small crew. They had just delivered their message to the alien fleet, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed like the impossible had been accomplished. But Dr. Emily Parker knew that this was only the beginning. The aliens would soon figure out what had happened, and when they did, they would not be kind. The ship's cloaking device was only a temporary solution. It would not keep them hidden forever. "Time's running out," Dr. Parker muttered to herself as she studied the data on her screen. The alien fleet was slowly beginning to realize that something was amiss. Their communications had been disrupted, and they were now scrambling to locate the source of the mysterious signal. Dr. Parker's fingers hovered over the controls, but there was little she could do. The ship was almost out of power, and there was no way they could fight off an entire alien fleet with the resources they had. "How much longer until we can make the next jump?" she asked, turning to her team. A technician named Lucas, one of the younger survivors, glanced up from his monitor. "We've got maybe 20 minutes left, Dr. Parker. After that, we'll need to power up again." "That's not much time," Dr. Parker replied, her mind racing. They had to find a way to make the most of their time, or they would be discovered and eliminated before they could even make a dent in the alien fleet's plans. The other members of the crew exchanged worried glances. They had trained for this moment for years, but it was one thing to imagine the impossible and quite another to actually be in the midst of it. The crew had been through a lot, but now they were truly on the edge. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. "We can't just wait for them to come to us," said Maria, a former soldier who had been part of the Earth's final defense forces. "We need to take the fight to them. If we don't act now, they'll destroy us all." Dr. Parker nodded, understanding the urgency in her voice. "You're right. We need to disable their communication systems before they can rally their entire fleet." Lucas and Maria quickly began working together, analyzing the data from the alien ships. They had no direct way of attacking the fleet, but they could disrupt their communications, disorienting them long enough to get a few more chances at success. If they could confuse the alien ships, they might be able to slip through their defenses. "This could work," Lucas said after a few moments, his fingers flying over the controls. "We can hack into their fleet's central communication hub. It won't destroy their ships, but it'll keep them from being able to organize properly. We'll have a chance to strike when they're disoriented." Dr. Parker stared at the screen, her eyes narrowing as she thought through the plan. It was risky, but it was the best shot they had. Do it. As Lucas began to implement the plan, the rest of the crew got ready for the next phase of their mission. Everyone knew what was at stake. This was the moment where they could turn the tide of the war or fail entirely. Outside the ship, the alien fleet continued to drift through space, unaware of the danger that was approaching. The massive ships, with their advanced technology and powerful weapons, were intimidating, but the humans had something the aliens didn't: the will to survive, no matter what. The alien commanders might have thought that humanity was finished, but the survivors aboard Hope's Dawn were proving them wrong. The message they had sent was simple, but it had a profound impact. The aliens had been caught off guard, and now they were scrambling to understand what had happened. The disruption in their communication system had thrown them into chaos. Some ships had lost contact with their commanders, while others were receiving false reports. Their once precise movements were now erratic, and the sense of superiority they had once felt was beginning to crumble. On board the ship, the crew worked in unison. They had no time for hesitation. Dr. Parker moved between the control panels, her mind focused on the task at hand. They had already done the unexpected. Now they had to make it count. "It's working," Lucas announced, his voice tense with relief. "The fleet's communications are scrambling. We've bought ourselves some time." Dr. Parker exhaled, though the weight of the situation still hung heavily on her. "We don't have much time. We need to be ready for anything." With the alien fleet in disarray, the humans had a window of opportunity. The ship's next jump would take them closer to the heart of the fleet, where they could launch the next phase of their plan. But Dr. Parker knew that no matter how successful this mission was, there was always the possibility that the aliens would regain control quickly. They were powerful, and their patience was endless. "We've got to move fast," Dr. Parker said, her voice low but filled with determination. "This is our chance to strike. We can't let it slip away." As Hope's Dawn slowly adjusted its course toward the heart of the alien fleet, the crew braced themselves for what was coming next. They had no idea how long their plan would hold, but they knew one thing. The aliens might have thought they had won, but humanity was not done yet. In the cold vacuum of space, with the vast alien fleet just beyond their reach, the survivors aboard Hope's Dawn prepared for their next move. They had made their presence known. They had sent a message to the alien invaders, and now the real battle was about to begin. There was no turning back now. They had set in motion a chain of events that would determine the fate of humanity. And in this quiet, dark corner of space, a small group of people were about to show the aliens just how wrong they were about humanity's will to fight. The crew aboard Hope's Dawn felt the weight of their mission press down on them as they prepared for the next step. Their small, barely functioning ship had become their only hope, and with every passing moment, the tension grew. Outside, the alien fleet was still disoriented from the communications blackout they had caused, but it wouldn't last forever. The humans knew that they had only a brief window of opportunity. Dr. Parker stared at the flickering screens in front of her. The alien ships were massive, sleek, and intimidating, but their disarray had created a crack in their confidence. They had thought the humans were finished. Now, they were discovering just how wrong they were. "We need to move quickly," Dr. Parker said, breaking the silence. If we wait too long, the aliens will regroup and tighten their defenses. We can't afford to let them recover." Maria, who had been monitoring the alien fleet's movements, nodded. "They've started trying to repair their systems. Some of the ships are communicating again, but it's still chaos. We have a small window to get inside their perimeter." Lucas, his eyes glued to the control panel, added, "Once we're close enough, we can send a signal to Earth. They'll know we're still alive, but we have to get through the heart of their fleet first." Dr. Parker clenched her fists. They had spent months preparing for this moment. The ship was a relic compared to the alien technology they faced, but it had one thing the aliens lacked: the indomitable will to survive. The human spirit was their most powerful weapon, and it had never been more apparent than it was now. "All systems are ready," Lucas reported, his voice steady but tinged with the anxiety that they all felt. "We're in position." Dr. Parker nodded. "Let's move." The ship lurched forward, the quiet hum of its engines barely a whisper in the vastness of space. Outside, the fleet of alien ships loomed like a dark, intimidating wall. The Hope's dawn slowly edged closer, blending with the shadows of space. The cloaking device, though imperfect, kept them hidden for now, but Dr. Parker knew they could not rely on it for long. The aliens were already beginning to scan the area more closely, trying to detect any signs of the humans' presence. The clock was ticking, and every second counted. As they moved deeper into the alien fleet's heart, the crew remained tense, waiting for the inevitable detection. No one spoke. The only sounds were the soft beeping of the ship's instruments and the sound of breath being held in suspense. In a few moments, they would either succeed or be discovered. "Distance to target, 100 kilometers, Maria said, her voice calm but with an underlying tension. "We're getting closer." Dr. Parker's mind raced, calculating every possible outcome. She had to stay focused. Every choice, every action they took now would determine their success or failure. The pressure was unbearable, but she knew she had to keep her composure. The fate of humanity rested on this moment. The ship continued its approach, and soon the alien vessels grew larger on the screen. They were close, too close. The danger of being detected was growing by the second. Dr. Parker's heart raced as she gave one final command. "Engage the signal relay. Let's send the message to Earth." Lucas tapped the controls, and the ship's communication systems began to work at full capacity. In a matter of seconds, a signal began broadcasting to Earth. It wasn't much, just a brief message to confirm that humanity had not been defeated, that there was still hope. "Message sent," Lucas said, his voice tight with emotion. "But they're starting to detect us." The alien fleet's scanning systems were picking up something. Dr. Parker's stomach dropped. The moment they had feared was here. The cloaking device was failing. Their presence had been discovered. "Brace for impact," Maria said, her voice low. Just then, an alarm blared through the ship. Red lights flashed in the cabin, signaling the breach in their defenses. The alien ships were closing in, their sensors locking onto Hope's dawn. Dr. Parker had anticipated this moment, but nothing could prepare her for the reality of it. She needed to act fast. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Dr. Parker commanded, her voice steady despite the growing tension. Lucas quickly adjusted the controls, and the ship jerked as it swerved sharply, dodging an incoming detection beam from one of the larger alien ships. The Hope's dawn was small and nimble, able to twist and turn more easily than the much larger alien vessels. But the gap was closing. The aliens would soon realize they had been detected, and the pressure would be on. A shudder ran through the ship as it narrowly avoided another scan. The crew held their breath. They were so close to the heart of the fleet, yet it felt as though they were miles away from safety. "Keep moving," Dr. Parker urged. "We can make it through, just a little further." But the alien ships were adapting. Their weapons were beginning to charge, and they were starting to adjust their patrol patterns. The window for escape was closing quickly. The alien fleet might have been disoriented, but their coordination was still formidable. They would not be caught off guard for much longer. Dr. Parker watched as the larger ships began to shift their formations. It was clear they were anticipating a threat. The aliens were no longer in disarray. They were regrouping, adapting, and preparing to strike back. Her heart pounded in her chest. They had been so close. But as the first of the alien ships began to target them, Dr. Parker knew there was no turning back. This was the moment of truth. They had sent the message to Earth, and now they had to see if they could make it out alive. She looked over at her team. There was no fear in their eyes, just resolve. They had come this far, and they were ready to see this through. The battle had just begun, but they were determined to fight until the end. The hum of the ship's engines seemed louder than ever as Hope's Dawn drifted closer to the heart of the alien fleet. Despite their cloaking device, the crew knew their time was running out. Every moment brought them nearer to discovery, but they also knew that this was their best chance to do something no one had thought possible. The odds were stacked against them, but their resolve remained unshaken. Dr. Parker looked around at the determined faces of her crew. Despite their weariness, each person seemed focused, ready to take on whatever the aliens would throw at them. They were a small crew, only 5 people aboard the ship, but in the grand scheme of things, they were more than enough. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology, but its ability to adapt, fight, and survive. Approaching target, Maria's voice echoed through the cabin, a note of tension creeping in. "We're almost in position, but I don't know how much longer we'll be able to keep the cloak up." Dr. Parker nodded, watching the alien fleet on the screen. The giant ships had spread out in a protective formation, sensing that something was amiss. The moment they were discovered, the humans knew it would be too late. They had to act fast. "We don't have much time," Dr. Parker said, turning to Lucas. "How's the signal relay? Can we send a message now?" Lucas' hands flew across the console. His fingers moved with a kind of urgency, but also precision, as if every moment mattered. "Ready to send another signal to Earth," he said. "But once we send it, they'll know exactly where we are. The cloak won't hold for long after that." "We don't have a choice," Dr. Parker replied, her voice calm but filled with determination. "Send the signal." Lucas tapped a few more keys, and within seconds, the signal began transmitting. A small, encrypted message reached Earth, a beacon of hope that humanity was still standing. The message was simple, but it was the most important thing they could send. Humanity was still alive, and they were still fighting. Almost immediately, the alien ships began to react. Their sensors, which had been scanning the area for some time, now zeroed in on Hope's Dawn. Dr. Parker knew they had been detected. The aliens were moving quickly, adjusting their positions, preparing for whatever came next. The small human ship had drawn the attention of the entire fleet. Hope's Dawn shook slightly as the energy from the alien ships pulsed through space. Dr. Parker's heart raced. The crew was vulnerable now. There was no going back. But they couldn't afford to hesitate. Every second counted. "We need to get out of here," Maria said, her hand gripping the edge of her seat. "They'll be on us any second now." Dr. Parker nodded again. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. All hands. Brace yourselves." The ship lurched as Lucas activated the thrusters, sending Hope's Dawn into a rapid course change. The aliens' weapons began charging, and Dr. Parker could see the threat growing. They were nearly surrounded by the alien fleet, and the ship was too small to fight back in any conventional way. Their best hope was to confuse the aliens further, to make them question their tactics, just long enough to escape. "Switch to manual," Dr. Parker called out. "We need to move unpredictably. Use the nearby asteroids for cover. They won't expect us to maneuver like this." Maria gave a quick nod and moved to take control of the ship's navigation. "Hold on tight," she warned the crew. The ship swerved, sharply dodging an incoming beam of energy. The alien ships followed, but their larger size made it difficult for them to match Hope's Dawn's agile movements. The crew knew this was their advantage, but the risk of collision with one of the massive alien ships was high. Every turn, every shift in direction, carried immense risk. The tension in the cabin was palpable. Each person on board knew how important these maneuvers were. They weren't just trying to survive. They were sending a message. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would not simply accept defeat. "Almost there," Maria said, her voice tight, as the ship dodged another blast. The crew's eyes were fixed on the screens. They could see the alien ships pulling into tighter formations, closing in on them. The Hope's Dawn was surrounded, and it seemed as though there was no way out. Dr. Parker's mind raced. She had always known that the mission was risky. There were no guarantees, but what she hadn't expected was how much humanity's will to survive would shine through. The aliens had underestimated that will, just as they had underestimated everything else about humanity. "We're getting close to the asteroid field," Maria said, her hands working quickly. "If we can just make it through, we might have a chance." Dr. Parker's fingers tightened around the armrest of her seat. The crew had only one option left: to use the chaos of the asteroid field to their advantage and disappear into the vastness of space. It was their only shot at survival, and even that was uncertain. But Dr. Parker refused to let go of the hope that they could make it out alive. The ship's hull groaned as it entered the asteroid field. The crew held their breath as they weaved in and out of the large floating rocks. Each move was critical. A single wrong turn could mean the end. But they had no choice. They had to push forward. "We're almost through," Lucas said, his voice sounding both relieved and uncertain. "They're losing track of us. It's working." The last of the alien ships hesitated, unable to follow them into the asteroid field. Hope's Dawn emerged from the other side, barely escaping the tightening grip of the alien fleet. The crew exhaled collectively, their bodies trembling with relief. Dr. Parker allowed herself a moment to breathe, but she knew the danger wasn't over. They had bought themselves time, but the aliens would not stop searching. The message had been sent. The fight was far from over. For now, humanity had won a small victory, and that was enough. But the battle was only just beginning. As Hope's Dawn drifted through the silence of space, they knew the aliens would not forget this moment. The survivors aboard this small ship had defied the odds, and in doing so, had proven that humanity's will to survive was something the invaders could not easily defeat. The crew sat in silence, their breath slow and steady as they drifted deeper into the unknown. The threat of the alien fleet had not disappeared. It was still out there, lurking. But for the moment, they were free. The stars outside their windows were a reminder of how small and fragile their ship was, and yet it had survived. Humanity had survived. Dr. Parker leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. The exhaustion was settling in, but she couldn't afford to rest yet. Their mission was far from complete. She glanced around at the faces of her crew, each person reflecting a different emotion. Maria, the navigator, was focused on the star maps, plotting their next course with precision. Lucas, the technician, was fiddling with the ship's controls, ensuring everything was running smoothly. But it was Dr. Parker who felt the weight of the responsibility the heaviest. She was the one who had made the decisions, the one who had led them into this situation. And while they had won this small battle, the larger war was still ahead of them. "How much longer until we reach Earth?" she asked, breaking the silence. Maria glanced up from the console. "A few more days. We've managed to stay off the radar for now, but we can't keep running forever." Dr. Parker nodded. They had to reach Earth with the message, with proof that humanity was still alive, still fighting. The aliens needed to know that they had not succeeded in wiping out humanity. There was hope. There was resistance. They needed Earth to be prepared, to know that the fight would be long and difficult, but not hopeless. "How's the communication relay?" Dr. Parker asked Lucas. "Still good," Lucas responded. "We're transmitting at full power, but the moment we emerge from this dead zone, the aliens will pick up our signal. It won't take them long to track us down. Dr. Parker's thoughts raced. They had to be strategic. If they could send a final, encrypted message to Earth, one that could be decrypted only by their highest command, they might stand a chance. The aliens had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and innovate, but now they had to play it smart. They couldn't afford to be reckless. "We need to make sure we're ready for whatever comes next," Dr. Parker said, her voice steady but firm. "Prepare the ship for anything. We don't know how long we have before they catch up." Maria and Lucas nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. It wasn't just about survival now. It was about sending a message that would change the course of everything. The ship's engines hummed quietly as Hope's Dawn continued its journey. But even in the quiet, the tension was palpable. Everyone on board knew that they were alone in this fight. The rest of humanity had no idea what was happening, no idea that the future of their species was hanging by a thread. Dr. Parker stood and walked over to the observation window. She looked out at the stars, feeling a mix of awe and fear. They had come so far, and yet the hardest part was still ahead of them. Earth would need to prepare for a war, one that could last for years. The aliens had believed they had won, but humanity's resilience had proven them wrong. "We've made it this far," Dr. Parker said softly, her voice almost a whisper, "and we'll make it back. We'll make sure Earth knows we're still here." The crew exchanged glances, the weight of her words settling in. They had come to realize that the fight they were in wasn't just for survival. It was for the future of their children, their families, their entire way of life. And if they didn't make it, if Hope's Dawn didn't make it back, they would become the last hope for humanity. "Keep the course steady, Maria," Dr. Parker said, turning back to the controls. "We need to be ready for whatever comes next." Maria nodded. "Aye, Captain." As they continued their journey, every moment felt like a countdown. They couldn't outrun the alien fleet forever. The only thing they had on their side now was the element of surprise. Humanity had already shown that it could adapt, fight, and survive. But could they hold on long enough for Earth to prepare for the war that was coming? The uncertainty loomed ahead, and even though the crew of Hope's Dawn had survived a near impossible escape, they all knew the fight was far from over. The battle had just begun. A few days later, Dr. Parker stood once more at the ship's controls, her eyes scanning the distant stars. Their next move would be critical. They couldn't allow themselves to be caught off guard. Not again. They had to be ready. "We're about to emerge from the dead zone," Maria said, breaking Dr. Parker's concentration. "We'll be visible again." Dr. Parker didn't flinch. "We'll make it count," she said. "Prepare to send the final message to Earth. It's time for them to know what we've learned." With one last look out the window, she turned back to face her crew. There was no turning back now. What they had started was bigger than all of them. And no matter what happened next, humanity's spirit had been reignited. They had proven to the universe that they would never give up.